For the first time since 2014, the Jewish people woke up this morning and there were no hostages in Hamas captivity. It's a strange feeling. First of all, I want to extend my condolences to the entire Gvili family, Itzik, Talik, Omri, and Shira. Cannot even imagine what they've been through. Shira, having sat on my podcast just about 10 days ago, you could sense that on one hand, she didn't want to believe that Ronnie might actually be dead because there was no evidence one way or the other. And she also had a fear, I believe, that there could be some sort of Ron Arad situation in which Ronnie's body is not found for many, many years, if at all. What stands out to me right now is the tremendous miracle that Ron Gvili's body was found. For those who are still unfamiliar, Ron Gvili left his house on October 7th with a fractured shoulder to try to protect the border. Was killed. His body was brought into Gaza. There was a photo of him laying limp on the back of a motorcycle. He was seen next to a hospital, but he had not been seen, heard from since. This is 843 days. The IDF intelligence was able to capture people in the last couple of weeks and months, as the story is told, to then locate where Ronnie was buried and identify his body yesterday. It's important to note that when he was initially taken, there really was no knowledge of where he went. And amidst the rubble and so many bodies, somehow, with God's help, the IDF was able to locate Ronnie's body. It's a tremendous, tremendous miracle. I want to comment on some of the response to Ronnie being returned to Israel. First, there's a desire for some to say the war is over. I think that if there's any lesson from October 7th, it's that the Jewish people living in the land of Israel, the war is never over because there are people that want to kill Jews and there are people that want to destroy the state of Israel. The war, unfortunately, is never over. The state of Israel needs to be at a high alert and readiness. And as long as you have genocidal terror armies on the border, Israel needs to essentially consider itself as if it is at war. It doesn't mean that every single person needs to run to a bomb shelter. Of course, time will tell what happens with Iran. But the idea that someone would just declare war over and say, okay, back to normal life is pretty silly. There were some claims, certainly within the prime minister's office, about showing that this is an achievement of the main war aim or one of the main war aims. I think it's in poor taste. Of course, the return of Ronnie Gvili's body is a victory, but there were 46 hostages who did go into Gaza alive and left in body bags. So to claim that every single hostage was returned just as promised is a little bit, more than a little bit, disingenuous and highly offensive to the families of those who fell. If there's one thing I've learned about this war and the many nuances is that it's so nuanced and there are so many perspectives on what happened. There's so many different phases. So returning a hostage in November of 2023 is very different than returning a hostage body on January 26th, 2026. It's important to note these complexities and actually be sensitive to the different families and victims of this attack. I also couldn't just help but think about all the families that have had closure now for 844 days, and the idea that Ronnie Gvili's family is finally getting that, it's truly unspeakable. The idea that they wouldn't know if their son was alive or dead for 843 days. I cannot even imagine what they went through. It's important to keep in perspective that, yes, the Jewish people should be very happy that Ron Gvili's body is returned. Of course, it's a victory for the IDF in the sense that they were able to find and locate his body against literally all odds. But at the same time, it's important to maintain a degree of humility when it comes to achieving all goals. There were hostages that came in that entered Gaza alive and left in body bags. And to say that every single goal was achieved vis-a-vis the hostages is simply incorrect. I also want to give a shout out to all of the soldiers who fought for so many days to do everything they could to achieve the war aims, including returning the hostages, the soldiers who lost their lives, the families who have sacrificed quite a lot for their loved one to go to battle. The Israeli society is going to take a long time to recover from this, if at all. And without a strong backbone and family support system, none of these soldiers would be able to do it. Also, the volunteers on the ground who have helped enable these tremendous heroes to continue to go out there despite certain failures from the military and the government. Those people know who they are and they deserve a big shout out, because without their constant support, so many of these people on the front lines wouldn't have what they need. And it truly helped push people to continue to go forward. But as I said before, the war is never really over. If you look at Hamas's attempt to reconstitute itself in Gaza, if Israel declares a war over and says, okay, we're good now, I'm afraid that bad things are coming. So this war goal is no longer a war goal, but the war is still going. And I think it's important for Israel and for the Israeli people to understand that. And I think most do. The question is how it's marketed, how it's presented in the American media, and what happens in, the rebuilding of Gaza. I don't think that it would be wise for anything to be rebuilt before Hamas is completely disarmed and removed. I also want to give a shout out to the injured soldiers, those who paid a very, very high price but are still alive. You were doing God's work, and Hashem should bless you that you have quick and speedy recovery to the best of your ability, and life should not be more challenging than it needs to be. To see so many people without limbs or without the use and function of their arm or leg is very difficult. And a lot of times it can be overshadowed by the fact that there's just so many people in that situation. And it's not really a comparison between, oh, you only lost one leg versus someone losing two legs. Every single person who endured a physical injury deserves that recognition. And it's a price that people can never be repaid for. Also add that the unity around the hostage movement is something that should be inspirational for the Jewish people. And again, people are going to complain and say right wing, left wing, all sorts of different agendas for Bibi, against Bibi. I don't really care about that right now. The idea that people came together to pray, to support and rally on behalf of these hostages, while I personally might not have agreed with all of the messages or every single sign or every single flag, it's something that the Jewish people should learn from and be able to replicate without the need for a life and death situation. I think it's important to remember that center baseline of the Jewish people. And it's very helpful for my generation and the younger generations to see that it is possible to come together across political lines in a respectful way and to be able to actually have a conversation regardless of political beliefs or standing. I just want to extend condolences to the entire Gvili family and give a big shout out to everyone who sacrificed so much to help bring Ron Gvili's body home to Israel for a proper burial.